And it's really important now, guys, because I did update all the grades Sunday night by about 5 o'clock. If you turned in work after that, I still have to grade it, but I grade everything on the weekends, make sure everybody knows where their grades are Monday morning. So you can look at that. Now, raise your hand if you've checked your grades lately. Okay, are they looking pretty good if you've done all your work? If you're doing all your work, you're doing great. In fact, here's some good news. All those that have finished all their study guides are passing the state test. Now, here's a warning to those who haven't finished all your guides. Built into many of the guides are the state test questions. And if you don't do those, then you'll have to repeat this class. So do you really want to do that? I don't think so. So get busy on that and make sure you get all your work caught up, because I have about 8 students who have not passed the state test because they just haven't turned in the study guides that has those questions in there. All right. So, but most of you are all caught up, which is really kind of exciting. What I'm going to do is share the screen right now, and we're going to go to the website for a minute and show you now your next big assignment. Now also too, let's see if I can get this to work here. There we go. Let's jump to the homepage, the website. Put this down so you can see it. There we go. Look, here's the deal. There's the research paper link now. Now the research paper link is been changed because I had a bug in the earlier versions that I just had to delete them all and start over. So everybody's going to use the same link, which is great because now we have one question, just 2 sources required. Everybody's just looking at 2 presidents and not 3. So I think this is better anyway. Also too, this lecture will go right here. And I am requiring the readings on Biden and Harris, which will be in a study guide later. So we'll have at least 2 more study guides before the semester's over, and then your research paper. Okay, now also I put a link down here I'm going to refer to in the lecture. You need to have a comparison and contrast essay, and one of the things you compare and contrast is the percentage of the popular vote. I think that would make a good number to compare. You can't compare electoral college numbers because they had less votes, electoral college members in the past, but you can do the percentage of vote, how much they won or lost. That would be a nice comparison to make. So I put that in. I just thought it was a fun one, an easy one that you can do in like a couple of sentences and get you off to a good start on your essays. Let's go ahead and click this link and look at it for a second. Obviously, you put your name in there, pick your period number. When you're picking a compare and contrast, which one of these are you going to do? Now, after our little survey, you guys added Nixon and Carter. Obama, Jackson, Hoover were in there to begin with. And we'll be talking a lot about the things you can use of Mr. Trump today, because he's half the essay, right? What did he do or not do compared to these other presidents? And then you need to put in, of course, your 2 sources, right? Just copy and paste the web address in there. I don't need anything else than that. And then as you're coming down here, here's now the new question, which is kind of one size fits all in a factual, researched way. Now, here's where people get messed up. When they start to write the research paper, they think their opinion matters. Your opinion does not matter. There can be no opinion in this. You have to deal with cold, hard facts. I'll give you one right off the bat. Trump claims he had the greatest economy in the history of the world before coronavirus hit. That's not true. The last 3 years of Obama were better than the first 3 years of Trump. There's been many periods of our history where the economy was better, and you can compare the economic successes and failures of these presidents. I don't think there's any president since Hoover who's lost more jobs than Trump has. It's down to 3.9 million jobs net loss. He didn't create new jobs, he's lost them. You can say, well, if he hadn't had coronavirus, then he wouldn't. It's not a what if, it's what actually happened. He's lost 3.9 million jobs. No president, probably since Hoover, has a net loss. And that is one I would use in my essay: job creation, job loss. I mean, that's an easy fact. You can just compare the presidents, just data for data. So compare and contrast your selected president with Donald J. Trump. Explain the appeal of each, what brought them into power. So now I'm letting you talk a little bit about their elections, their governing style, their successes and failures, and at least 5, now count them, 5 major events in their presidencies. This goes beyond their election, goes beyond these other things. 5 things. like job loss, job creation, right? That would be a good one. That would compare and contrast their overall success or lack of success using actual achievements or failures. This is not an opinion piece. This is facts, facts. Okay, facts are stubborn things. Then you'll choose which one you think did the better job based on what you wrote. Now, honestly, it's going to be really hard to do a positive factual portrayal of a president whose presidency came to such a crashing halt. You know as well as I do that when you're an incumbent president, it's really hard to lose, but he lost anyway in dramatic fashion. And there are reasons for that. The American people spoke. And guess what? It's getting bigger by the day. Before they were saying it's the biggest election in 100 years, which would have gone back to the election between Teddy Roosevelt, Woodrow Wilson, and Taft. They had a three-way election. There's a lot of interest in that election. Well, this actually goes back even further to an election 120 years ago. So it was between William McKinley and a populist rural evangelical by the name of William Jennings Bryan, who basically dominated the Democratic Party for 3 election cycles, ran for president 3 times, very popular guy. We know him in history, William Jennings Bryan. Well, McKinley was the big business Republican at the time. This guy was the man of the rural people, this Jennings Bryan guy. Now, let's compare that election to this one. Joe Biden now is closing in on 79 million votes. It's going to break 79 million. It goes up almost a few 100,000 a day. Mr. Trump is down at 47%. I think it was 43 last time. So he never broke 50%. 73 million, he's probably going to maybe inch to 74. But Mr. Biden now breaks all records. And this is a magical number. He's getting to 51%, which is huge in American elections. Is it an electoral college landslide? No, but it's a good, sizable, solid win in modern times. And this 306 number is important because that's what Trump got last time. So it's a complete flip of opinion on Trump by a massive number of votes. Okay, so was it a landslide? Well, let's hear from Mr. Trump's own words here. So let's play this clip. I love this clip. Here we go.
Because we did something that nobody thought was even possible. We ended up with 306 to 223. That's a pretty big victory. We had a landslide, 306 to 223. Remember, 306 to 223, that's a slaughter. That's a slaughter. 306 to 223, that's a pretty good shellacking. I get it. 306 to 223.
I'm not disputing you beat Hillary Clinton.
That's a lot.
Listen.
But we had a tremendous landslide electoral college victory, like people haven't seen in a long time, and it's a great honor. They lost it very badly and very easily. I mean, you look at the votes, it was 306 to what, 223 or something. They lost it by a lot. I got the 306. 306 to 223. I won it easily. 306 to 223. I won it pretty easily. I got 306 electoral votes against 223. That's a tremendous victory. I won 306 to 223, which was a lot in the electoral college. 306 to, I guess, 223, which was a tremendous margin of difference. Not only did we win the election, we had an electoral college landslide. Okay, it was a landslide.
And that's really what he's deflecting, is that he didn't win the popular vote. So he's trying to make it sound like he had this big electoral college landslide. And this is a good solid victory. He should be very proud of it. But he's exaggerating to cover up the fact that he lost the popular vote. And I think he knew that that's not a good place to be. Most presidents who don't win the popular vote the first time struggle to get reelected. So he's campaigning from day one. He never stopped. The first day of his presidency, he organized his next campaign. What Mr. Trump's good at is campaigning. What he's lousy at is governing. Well, I'll explain that in a second. Who was the other guy, though, that brought out the people to vote? And this was William Jennings Bryan. Now, William Jennings Bryan is most famous in our history now, oddly enough, for joining a trial as a prosecutor against a teacher in Tennessee in 1925. The state of Tennessee banned the teaching of Darwinism and evolution in school. So here's a biology teacher and he can't teach biology basically. Because it's a little hard not to talk about adaptation and change and all that kind of stuff in a biology class, but it was prohibited by state law. They could only teach the creation theory. That was it. This is the Bible Belt, remember. So Tennessee's the Bible Belt. So they had a state law. Well, the teacher thought, I'm just going to teach biology and got fired for it. So he sued. Famous case. Biggest lawyers possible showed up, including Bryan. And Bryan argued to keep evolution out of biology class. And he made the case. By the way, they won the case. This guy Scopes lost the case and lost his job, but he was a populist. He represented rural interests. He was religiously based, wanted a religious-based education based on the Bible. And back in 1925, that was, a big thing, and it worked for him. His main thing, though, was to help poor farmers against big business interests. So he was kind of, in some ways, a Bernie Sanders-like character, but with this other side of it. So no science, don't teach the science part, and don't keep those separate. Separation church state's a great thing. So you can teach science and then religion can be separate. You don't try to combine the two. But that was what was going on. And so that's why his numbers were so big in the election, but he lost to McKinley in that election. Now look at how well they voted back in the 1800s. Oh my goodness, they're so much better than we were. What happened to us? We just, but this election, the numbers aren't, they'll be up in here and it'll be almost 70% of, which is huge for modern times. So we need to be very proud of this election that Americans turned out in record numbers. Okay, so who won our contest now? Well, we had a contest and in the biggest, now here's the thing, you guys can just chalk up biggest moments in history. This is one of them, the biggest election history. You're living through the biggest crisis in 100 years in terms of the coronavirus. You've seen the first woman elected. You were born and around when the first African-American was elected. You've watched the country change. So you're living in major historic times. And these guys got the vote right. So it was Jenna who won gold, Andrew silver, and Natalia bronze. Basically, they all got 306, so we had to go to the tiebreakers. When we get to the Senate tiebreaker, these two were close. The Senate tiebreaker was tough because we still have 2 Senate seats we don't know who won yet. But nevertheless, they were within that 2 points, so they went on to the next one. So for the first time in UCAS history, we had to go to the House count to see who won, and Jenna came out ahead on that. So congratulations to all three. All three get Zimbabwe points, so that's good. But really pleased with all three of you. And those essays were fun to read too. So well done there. All right, now let's talk about your research paper. Basically, you've got to talk about facts. If you try to get off onto campaign rhetoric, what Mr. Trump says and what the truth is often very different. So if you just rant on something that you've heard from one of his speeches, you're going to get it all wrong. You have to deal with facts. So here's how you do it. Compare and contrast at least 5 major things from each presidency. For example, if you're doing Jackson, what about balancing the budget? Jackson did it. Trump blew a hole in the budget bigger than any president in peacetime. So you can compare different ways, right? Trump's created less jobs than any president since Hoover. You can compare those 2 numbers if you're doing Hoover. So let's take a look at this. Here's how you can compare and contrast. You can compare success to success, success to failure, failure to success, or failure to failure. All that works. So finding good comparisons where you can portray their presidencies accurately with facts shouldn't be that hard because you have so much to work with President Trump. But let's see. Now listen, this election, decisive and a huge victory, and according to Trump, a landslide victory for Biden, complete turnabout. It wasn't a rejection of traditional conservatism. What happened is, you guys remember the Lincoln Project? What was their goal? To get 4% of Republicans to switch and to vote for Biden. But that didn't mean they wanted them to stop being Republicans. So what happened is, in Utah, it happened, we saw it here, Republicans, independents would vote for Biden, then vote for the Republican candidate for Senate and House. We saw it over and over again. Republicans picked up 12 seats in the House, for example, and they may hold on to the Senate. So we'll see. So the rejection was truly Trump. It was a rejection of him personally, and a rather decisive one. Why? Because of his failure in COVID. I mean, there's one you can talk about. Failure on climate change, pulling out of the Paris Climate Agreement, erasing by presidential order a lot of the things that were in when President Obama was trying to get us to be better with the environment. His failure on civil rights. He pulled out, remember the Law and Order campaign that fizzled and failed because nobody was buying it? At least most of the voters weren't. Black Lives Matter is changing the country in a positive way. And I think that's a good thing. But he misread that, and he missed on that one. Failure in the economy, losing 3.9 million jobs as of this morning, right? His attacks on voting, to me, is just ridiculously horrible. What president would attack the sacred vote of a democracy? The only fraud that we've seen is his lawsuits that have no substance. They're being thrown out of court right and left. They finally just dropped them all in Arizona. Even the legal firms trying to represent this don't have enough evidence. The judges are saying, you don't have any evidence, go away. So this is one of the cleanest elections, if not the cleanest in American history. And yet he's attacking mail-in voting. He's attacking all this. To me, that's as a president of the United States, not to uphold our sacred vote. His resistance to transition, really important that the Biden team get in there and find out what's going on so they can have a nice transition, especially now, right? That we might have a vaccine to distribute. How are we going to do that? We're only going to have a few million doses to start with. Who gets it first? How does it get distributed? Get out there and do that right. I'm so glad we have Biden in there because he's done this kind of stuff before. And so we can have this transition, but he can't get his people into the CDC because Trump hasn't declared him the winner. And there's a law that funds this, that allows this to happen, and he won't enact the law. Never mind, that is going to be a negative on Trump too. This holding out against a landslide, in his own words. His 22,000 lies and distortions, how are you going to deal with that in your research paper? You need to. Breaking constitutional norms right and left. He said, Article 2 gives me all the power to do whatever I want. No, it doesn't. You have to adhere to the checks and balances and work with Congress. He didn't do that very well. And his basic incompetence. He never did hire all the people needed to fulfill the positions needed in any department. He burned through people so fast, the turnover of people working for him, like 4 communications directors, 4 secretaries of defense, the turnover led to no stability at all. The chaos candidate is the chaos president. He just simply did not show us that he had the capacity to actually manage a big government. See, running for office is different than running the country. They're 2 different jobs. And there's not many people who can do both well. He campaigned brilliantly, but never managed. He didn't read. He hasn't attended a coronavirus task force meeting in months. Just the incompetence is going to be talked about for decades and decades. And then the debt. Running this country into deep debt before coronavirus hit was kind of unthinkable in my mind as a fiscal conservative myself. So there's a lot to work with here. It's one of the true major failures of any president ever. Now, we don't know what's going to happen in Georgia. Georgia's a weird thing. Let me explain it. They have 2 senators up. That's rare. Why? One senator retired early. And so they have to fill that seat while they fill the normal seat. So you only get like every 2 years, you get 1 senator, 2 years later, you get another, and then 2 years, you don't vote for Senate. That's normal. Here's what happens here. Georgia has a weird rule. They have third-party candidates, right? So they vote. If you don't get 50%, then they go to a runoff. In other words, they run the election all over again, but with only the top 2 finishers. So it gets all the third candidates out. I kind of like that system. I think it works really well, but that means we won't know the outcome here until much later. So can the Democrat beat the Republican in this state? We'll see. Okay. The next one is a temporary 2-year appointment. This person, Loeffler, was appointed because one guy retired because of illness. And so now she's running to keep the seat against Warnock. This is a fascinating race, but look at the third party candidates, Doug Collins, Jackson, they're now out. So now it's a runoff just between these two. And so they're going to decide the fate of the Senate here real soon in Georgia. Okay. So that's what's happening there. It's a good system. I think we should all go to it. If you don't get 50%, take the top 2 candidates, do a runoff, do it again, so that all the independent votes count. All right, now, Lincoln Project, what was their goal? Take 4% of Republicans and move them over to Joe Biden. That doesn't mean they cease to be Republicans in terms of their policies and issues and whatever. So they probably got everything they wanted. They maintained, 12 extra seats in the House. They may hold on to the Senate, but they got rid of Trump and Trumpism, which was their whole purpose as Republicans working against him. This was one of their last ads that congratulated Joe Biden on his victory. And of course, they're taking a victory lap here too. But I love this ad. It's a really polished ad. Here we go.
The end is coming. The end of the noise and lies. The end of the chaos and division. The end of the hate. In its place, a new America is ready to stand tall again. Ready to restore the goodness in the heart of our nation. Ready to put people before politics. Ready to lead, to innovate, to grow, to heal. It won't always be easy. There are tough times to come. COVID to be defeated. An economy to restore. But that new day is coming. A day when words like caring, competent, and professional won't be insults. A day when compassion and character mean more than celebrity. A day when every American's rights are respected and valued. That day is coming because of your hard work, your commitment, your energy and passion. That day is coming because of your vote. Joe Biden, our president. The Lincoln Project is responsible for the content of the...
Well, yeah. And the number of Republicans that want to purge the party of Trump and Trumpism and get back to traditional Republicanism is huge. It's a huge deal. And well, did it work? Well, let's see. Did they get 4% off the top? Well, they did. You have to understand Utah is a plus 15 Republican state. Now, we are not a Republican state the same way Alabama is. We have different values, different reasons why we're a Republican state. Very different than Mississippi, different than South Carolina. We're kind of our own unique thing, but it's plus 15. So you would anticipate that Trump would be in the mid 60s, as was our governor, Spencer Cox, 64%. Against the Democrat, 30%. That's pretty typical in Utah elections. Let's go here. What did Trump do? 58 to 37. There's your 4 points. Now, if you take that 4 points and you put it in Arizona and Nevada and Colorado, it means Biden wins. Here, you got to go another 11%. So it's going to be a little hard. Well, in this case, what, 8.7%. So yeah. Because, Utahns have trouble voting for, not the majority of Utahns have trouble voting for Democrats. But let's look at John McCain. John McCain got 62% against 34 for Barack Obama. Obama was very popular and managed to eat into the lead a little bit from 30 to 34, but, he's not going to win Utah. But look at Mitt Romney, 72% for president against Barack Obama's 24. That's Utah right there. And especially Utah County. Orrin Hatch, 65%. That election, the governor, Herbert, got 68%. So Trump underperformed somewhere between 4 and 6%, where Republicans would vote for Biden and then come back and vote for other Republican candidates. That's why the election in Salt Lake is so close right now between Burgess and Owens, right? Okay, so here we go. Donald J. Trump, last election only got 45%. Why? Because there was a third-party candidate, Evan McMullin, who was a Republican, never Trumper, that got 21% of the vote. Otherwise, he would have had his, 67%? So Mr. Trump, it worked. And my favorite ad, really a local ad, was this one. I love this ad. A student sent this to me. Thank you. I forgot who you are. I owe you one. This is brilliant. But this is a great, great ad. Let's go ahead and play it.
I'm Chris Peterson. And I'm Spencer Cox. We are currently in the final days of campaigning against each other to be your next governor.
And while I think you should vote for me,
Yeah, but really you should vote for me.
there are some things we both agree on.
We can debate issues without degrading each other's character.
We can disagree without hating each other.
And win or lose in Utah, we work together.
So let's show the country that there's a better way.
My name's Chris Peterson.
And I'm Spencer Cox.
And
we approve this message.
And I love that ad. Thank you for sending that to me. But I heard their debate, and they were really debating issues. They're both quality guys. You could tell either would make a great governor. And that is the purpose of political parties, to give us two good candidates. And they didn't do that last time 4 years ago. Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump, those weren't the two best people in America to be president. The election before that, we did a great job. We had a great Barack Obama and a great Mitt Romney. Either one would have made a great president. If the political parties will do their job and put the best people up, then America can't lose. But when we get an election like last time, Hillary Clinton versus Trump, bad things happen, and bad things did happen. Fortunately now, we got Joe Biden in there, who is a professional, competent. He's been there before. He knows what to do. He's battled viruses before. He's run point on the economy for President Obama. And that's the way it should be. We should pull together like these two guys are going to do. And that's really what it should be about. And this last 4 years has just been something that we kind of want to forget about, to be honest. But nevertheless, here we go. We promised you this. And I keep telling the classes, oh my goodness, you live in historic times. You do. The biggest pandemic in 100 years, not so much fun. The economy going through its turmoil, not so much fun. But even when things aren't all that great, we make history. It's during sometimes our biggest crisis where we make our biggest changes and improvements. And one of them is this right here, the first woman vice president in the history of the United States. That is pretty epically cool. In your lifetime, the first African-American president was elected, the first woman was elected. This is, yeah. And the Democratic Party likes making history like that. This is kind of the things they do. And you also have to understand, Kamala Harris right now has the inside track to be the next president of the United States. It's about a 20% chance that a vice president will become president. It's going to be higher, I think, in her case. So here we have Amendment 20, Section 3, that says if anything happens to Joe Biden, who's older than any president ever elected, that's historic too. Oldest person ever elected. Older than Donald Trump, who was the oldest. Older than Andrew Jackson, who was the oldest when he got elected. She may be president. And so that's why her pick was so important. So that's why we need to take a minute and listen to her speak. Because this, again, wow, amazing history. Really cool stuff. Okay, so here we go. Let's listen to Kamala Harris, as we promised, her acceptance speech.
So, Congressman John Lewis, before his passing, wrote, "Democracy is not a state, it is an act." And what he meant was that America's democracy is not guaranteed. It is only as strong as our willingness to fight for it. To guard it and never take it for granted. And protecting our democracy takes struggle, it takes sacrifice, but there is joy in it, and there is progress, because we, the people, have the power to build a better future. And when our very democracy was on the ballot in this election, with the very soul of America at stake, and the world watching, you ushered in a new day for America. To our campaign staff and volunteers, this extraordinary team, thank you for bringing more people than ever before into the democratic process. And for making this victory possible, to the poll workers and election officials across our country who have worked tirelessly to make sure every vote is counted. Our nation owes you a debt of gratitude. You have protected the integrity of our democracy. And to the American people who make up our beautiful country, thank you for turning out in record numbers to make your voices heard. And I know times have been challenging, especially the last several months. The grief, sorrow, and pain, the worries and the struggles. But we have also witnessed your courage, your resilience, and the generosity of your spirit. For 4 years, you marched and organized for equality and justice, for our lives and for our planet. And then you voted. And you delivered a clear message. You chose hope and unity, decency, science, and yes, truth. You chose Joe Biden as the next president of the United States of America. And Joe is a healer, a uniter, a tested and steady hand, a person whose own experience of loss gives him a sense of purpose that will help us as a nation reclaim our own sense of purpose. And a man with a big heart who loves with abandon. It's his love for Jill, who will be an incredible First Lady. It's his love for Hunter and Ashley and his grandchildren and the entire Biden family. And while I first knew Joe as vice president, I really got to know him as the father who loved Bo, my dear friend who we remember here today. And to my husband, Doug.
Okay, now that's kind of fun too, a new historic thing. The first husband, I guess. We got to come up with the title here, but Doug becomes the first man to become the second man, I guess. I don't know what we're going to call that, but Doug's his name. You might want to remember that, and he seems like a really cool guy. But here we go.
And our children, Cole and Ella, and my sister Maya, and our whole family. I love y'all more than I can ever express. We are so grateful to Joe and Jill for welcoming our family into theirs on this incredible journey. And to the woman most responsible for my presence here today, my mother, Shamala Gopalan Harris, who is always in our hearts. When she came here from India at the age of 19, she maybe didn't quite imagine this moment, but she believed so deeply in an America where a moment like this is possible. And so I am thinking about her and about the generations of women, Black women, Asian, white, Latina, Native American women, who throughout our nation's history have paved the way for this moment tonight. Women who fought and sacrificed so much for equality and liberty and justice for all, including the Black women who are too often overlooked, but so often prove they are the backbone of our democracy.
Now that's really a true statement, because what I'm going to just interrupt here, because the African American women, older women, were forged in that great moment of the civil rights movement. They always vote, they take it very seriously. And it was that group that took a failing Biden campaign, turned it completely around in South Carolina, and led to Biden getting the nomination. Their support was critical in this. And that group, really, yeah, we owe them so much in terms of, deciding Biden was the candidate. And I don't think any other candidate but Biden could have beaten Mr. Trump. I just don't think it would have happened. Maybe, but I think Biden was about the only person that really had this kind of shot to turn the tables on President Trump, because he's such a nice guy. He's moderate to left in terms of his politics. He's, it just seemed like the right fit. And they were the ones that got him on the map. So, yeah, it's quite a story, the South Carolina primary victory.
All the women who have worked to secure and protect the right to vote for over a century, 100 years ago with the 19th Amendment, 55 years ago with the Voting Rights Act, and now in 2020 with a new generation of women in our country who cast their ballots and continued the fight for their fundamental right to vote and be heard. Tonight, I reflect on their struggle, their determination, and the strength of their vision to see what can be unburdened by what has been. And I stand on their shoulders. And what a testament it is to Joe's character that he had the audacity to break one of the most substantial barriers that exists in our country and select a woman as his vice president. But while I may be the first woman in this office, I will not be the last. Because every little girl watching tonight sees that this is a country of possibilities. And to the children of our country, regardless of your gender, our country has sent you a clear message. Dream with ambition, lead with conviction, and see yourselves in a way that others may not, simply because they've never seen it before. But know that we will applaud you every step of the way. And to the American people, no matter who you voted for, I will strive to be a vice president like Joe was to President Obama. Loyal, honest, and prepared, waking up every day thinking of you and your family. Because now is when the real work begins. The hard work, the necessary work, the good work, the essential work to save lives and beat this epidemic, to rebuild our economy so it works for working people, to root out systemic racism in our justice system and society, to combat the climate crisis, to unite our country and heal the soul of our nation. And the road ahead will not be easy, but America is ready. And so are Joe and I. We have elected a president who represents the best in us, a leader the world will respect and our children will look up to, a commander-in-chief who will respect our troops and keep our country safe, and a president for all Americans.
Okay, so there's her speech. And it was a great speech, and congratulations to her, and congratulations to the United States of America for once again making history. This is breathtaking. In your lifetime, first African-American president. Remember Obama, his mom was a white woman from Kansas. His dad was from Kenya. Um, Kamala Harris, half Southeast Asian, India, and half African-American. This is what the country is. We're a multicultural, multiracial society, and we are easing into that new history with these new great leaders that we're picking. And so that's pretty cool. And so a history-making election on many, many accords. All right, so let's take a look at how the polls did. So everybody says, did the polls get it right? Polls get it wrong. Polls got it pretty right. They kept these states that turned out to be so close within the margin of error right to the end. I mean, I got this one. This was on November 3rd. This was before the election results started to come in, and they still had all these states too close to call, and they turned out to be too close to call. And so pretty good job. They were a little off in Iowa. They had the margin a little high in Pennsylvania for Biden, but enough. And so on. Ohio wasn't that close, but boy, they nailed Georgia. Nobody thought Georgia was that close. Texas was within 3 points. Arizona went to Biden. So here's what it turned out to be like. Here's the actual map. When everything settled out and the dust settled, 306 electoral votes, which is, according to Mr. Trump, an electoral college landslide. This is not a landslide. A landslide is more like 350, 380 or higher. And we've seen landslides of 400 before. But this is still a very, very solid win, especially in a divided country. How did it compare with last time? Well, let's take a look. Look at what changed on the map. Boom, right? Last election, historic vote. Boy, it was eclipsed this time. All right, well, now we do the comparison and contrast. And some of the things that you compare and contrast will be, for example, Mr. Trump is one of, I think, 3, I've counted 3, it might have been 4, presidents who lost the popular vote twice. So there's one. You can compare their voter turnout. This is the link that I told you about that's on the website. You can just go down, and the number I would look at is this in this chart right here is, here's the electoral college votes. Those change over time, so they're a poor point of comparison. But the margin of victory, right, might be to go the percent. This is the one I would go to. I go with the percent. So let's go to the percent of the popular vote. So popular vote percent, this column, let's look at Jackson, 55 and 54%. Okay, so pretty sizable. You'd have thought it'd been more, right? The way he comes out in history. We're doing, let's do Hoover. Okay, so we come down to Hoover, 58%. He won his first election by. Then, of course, he loses the next one, 57%. So it just flipped, right? It was like this election, it just flipped. Hoover won a landslide. He actually did, winning 444 electoral votes. The next election, 470 against him. So this was a flip of, these were landslides in both cases. Another one you could come down and compare, I think you guys were saying you did Nixon. Nixon, wow, look at this. He's 43 and then 60. 43 to 60. This was an incumbent. This is how incumbents usually do. They can be 43 and get 60. So if you're comparing Nixon, that's a good one. And then you come down here, let's see, who else were you comparing? Carter, 50.08, and then he lost big time to Reagan, right? I mean, it was like, yeah, and that's what happened to Trump. Trump and Carter, you can compare. Only Carter got more in the first time around, but then lost big to Reagan. And then when you get down here, you got Trump 46% last time, 50.808. It's going to probably go, it's 50.09. They haven't updated this slide. I need to update it. So it's going to probably be 51. So that's one little piece of comparison you could do. Take it one sentence to outline that, but I'm just giving everybody a freebie, right? Something that they can use for their comparison and contrast. All right, now the false claims are just out of this world weird. You've got to deal with that. The fact that this president tells more whoppers than anybody, including well, any president. I don't know any president that's told this many lies before Let's see which one this is. Oh, this is Don. I don't want that one. Okay, let's see if I can find. I want to get the right clip here. Let's see if I've got it. Oh, nope. Nope. My bad. I'm just going to have to click the link. It's a problem. Oh, here it is. Okay. So this is the group that keeps track of all the lies, and that's the Washington Post, of course. And at 22,000 or something. I mean, it's just distortions. Let's go through the list.
President Trump doesn't just have one. There are more than 400 claims he's repeated more than 3 times since taking office, and some of those he's made literally hundreds of times. The president has some standby claims that go hand in hand with his biggest campaign promises and deflect his most notable scandals.
We had the greatest economy ever. We had the greatest economy in the world, the history of the world. We have the greatest economy, in the history of the world. No country had anywhere near us. We had the best economy anywhere in the world by far.
Even before the current crisis, the economy did better under previous presidents.
Okay, now under Obama, the last 3 years of Obama were much better economically than the first 3 years of Trump, if you want a comparison there. And then it just collapsed the last year of Trump's presidency. Lost 3.9 million jobs. Maybe the only president since Hoover to actually lose more jobs than he created. Came in and more jobs have been lost from when he started.
You have to see these trade deals. We were losing a fortune. Hundreds of billions. We lost $500 billion. 300, 400, 500 billion dollars a year. Billion. And for years, we were losing a tremendous amount of money. We're losing a lot of money.
Countries don't make or lose money on trade. Trump has repeated this fundamental misunderstanding of how trade works more than 150 times.
It's the biggest reduction in taxes in the history of this country. It's the biggest tax cut in American history. This is the largest tax cut in the history of our country. The biggest tax cut, biggest reform of all time.
President Trump has repeated this false claim more than 200 times.
It wasn't even close to the biggest tax cut, and bigger tax cuts under Obama for the middle class, and certainly not as big as George W. Bush.
What Trump talks about fluctuates based on what's happening in the news. As the Russia investigation picked up, so did the number of false and misleading claims. When immigration became an issue during the midterms, the rate of false claims about immigration skyrocketed. And now he's made more false or misleading claims about the coronavirus than education, guns, and terrorism combined. And the rate of false and misleading claims has picked up the further the president has gotten into his first term, making more claims in his third year than in his first 2 combined.
Oh, believe me, if it's off by 1/100%, it's like I end up getting Pinocchios, right? Because, you know, they'd say, I'd like to give him a Pinocchio, 4 Pinocchios.
In fact, the president has earned.
Okay, so that's one of the things you can talk about. Every president gets caught with one misstatement, one big thing that it stands out, but this is just a constant barrage of misstatements, which were by design. It was part of his campaign strategy to win a second term. All right, so now let's talk about 8 issues. My goodness, because the false claim started right here with the inauguration. I have the biggest crowd in the inauguration ever. No, it wasn't true. You go down here, all of these, look at any one of those you could use to start your essay off with. And you only need 5. In terms of civil rights, they did pass a pretty substantial bill on criminal justice reform, which, you know, is a good thing. But wow, his mishandling of that, you know, cost him votes. The climate thing, unthinkable. And so just kind of look at those deals. But number one, of course, the number one issue for voters was COVID. And he obviously did not do well with that. One of the problems he had is he never got great legislation passed in his first 2 years. He fumbled the ball over and over again. Oftentimes, the Congress would have a deal ready to go, and then he'd undermine it, and it would then fail, like the big infrastructure bill and some other things. So while you can talk about the tax cut, was it the biggest of all time? No, it did run up the national debt. So it had a very big downside to it. So these are the facts you have to get into: the debt, the taxes. Was this the right thing to do? Who got that tax money? Did it just benefit the wealthiest Americans and not the average person? Well, that's pretty much what that tax cut was all about. So this is interesting. And then the Times, they had a big law ready to go. Nancy Pelosi, $3.4 billion of recovery aid for coronavirus. And he nixed it, and the Republicans in Congress killed it. So he had a chance 2 years where he controlled both House and Senate to get big things done and didn't do it. It was fumbling. Plus all of the legal stuff around this, the swirling around this president. There are more investigations, more indictments. He's had, 7 people close to his last campaign actually go to jail. He's pardoned some of them, which is weird. These are major felonies. His personal lawyer is in jail, wrote a book about it. And you go on and talk about like all these people that are under investigation. His foundation's under investigation. Also, you can't leave this out. He was the 3rd president impeached ever for abuse of power and obstruction of justice. That was a big deal. And that's one that better be in your essay. How many presidents have been impeached? Now think about it. None of the ones you're comparing were impeached except for Jackson, who was censured. A little bit different, but it's the same process. What was Trump impeached for? He tried to use the war in Ukraine, the civil war in Ukraine, against Russia. Russia's trying to take over half of this country. We put hundreds of millions of dollars of aid to help Ukraine fight the Russians, and he held it hostage. Here's how much Russia has taken over, right? What's President Trump done about this? No, nothing. He basically, this war is a hot war. It's going on as we speak. We had $300 billion of defensive weapons ready to go to help that country. And he decided to use it to get the newly elected president of Ukraine, Zelensky, to dig up dirt on his political opponent, Joe Biden, to accuse Biden of breaking laws in the Ukraine and his son Hunter. It didn't come to anything. The Ukrainian president didn't bite on this, but basically they had a phone call and he said, I would like you to do us a favor though. In other words, I've got these weapons and I'll give them to you. Congress is giving the money. It's all ready, but I'm going to hold them out. I want you to do us a favor. This is the smoking gun of the impeachment. So you need to talk about that. So let's kind of stop there, and we'll give you more comparison and contrast next time.